He wouldn't dare, Officer Miller sneered, his hand hovering with theatrical menace above the bright yellow taser holstered on his hip. "Get that mud out of here, old man, or it gets zapped. This is a clinic, not a kennel. Final warning." The E&I words, sharp and laced with casual, chilling contempt, sliced through the sterile, anxious air of the Veterans Affairs Clinic lobby. Elias Thorne, his shoulders stooped not just by the 70-odd years he carried, but by the invisible, crushing weight of battles fought and comrades lost long ago, flinched as if struck. His worn, gnarled hand instinctively tightened on the sturdy harness of Atlas, his golden retriever, whose intelligent, gentle eyes, usually pools of calm, now reflected a mirror of his master's sudden distress. Atlas, a creature of unwavering loyalty and paternatural empathy, weed softly, a low thrum of anxiety, sensing the tremor that ran through Elias's frail frame. Elias's face, a veritable roadmap of hardship, sacrifice, and an almost unbreakable quiet dignity, was etched with a sudden deep pain that seemed to hollow his already weary eyes. This clinic, this sanctuary meant for healing, for understanding, for acknowledging the wounds, seen and unseen, had in an instant transformed into another battlefield, one he was ill-equipped to fight. Type honor. If you believe service deserves unwavering respect from that brutal public humiliation, the narrative of Elias Thorne's mourning had only just begun its descent. He was a ghost in many ways, a relic of a forgotten war, a name buried deep in dusty archives. His life now was a quiet tapestry, woven with threads of solitude and routine, lived out in a small, tidy bungalow on the city's edge. Atlas was his shadow, his confidant, his four-legged anchor to a world that often felt alien and overwhelming. More than a pet, Atlas was a certified service animal, meticulously trained to mitigate the crippling effects of Elias's post-traumatic stress disorder, the sudden night terrors that clawed him from sleep, the disorienting flashbacks that could ambush him in broad daylight, the trembling anxiety that made simple tasks like grocery shopping an ordeal. The dog could sense the onset of an episode, nudging Elias, grounding him. His warm presence fought against the encroaching darkness. Atlas also provided physical support. Elias's left knee, shattered by shrapnel decades ago, often buckled without warning. The clinic, a sprawling, impersonal edifice of brick and bureaucracy, was a place Elias approached with a familiar sense of dread. Appointments were necessary evils, fraught with long waits, indifferent staff, and the constant gnawing feeling of being just another number, another case file. Today was for a routine checkup, a cursory examination of old wounds that never truly healed. He had hoped for a swift, uneventful visit. Officer Miller, however, had other plans. His voice, raspy with a mixture of disbelief and a rising tide of desperation, tried to reason with the security guard. He's a service dog, officer," Elias stammered, fumbling in his worn coat pocket for the laminated card. It was slightly frayed around the edges, the photograph of a younger Atlas, a little faded, but the official insignia of the certifying organization was clearly visible. "He's allowed." "He helps me." He held it out, his hands shaking almost imperceptibly. Miller, a man barely into his 30s with a buzz cut that seemed to accentuate the rigid set of his jaw and the coldness in his eyes, didn't even glance at the ID. He waved it away with a flick of his wrist, a gesture of utter dismissal. Yeah, everyone's got a service dog these days, old-timer," he sneered, his lips curling. "Looks like a pet to me, and pets aren't allowed. Clinic policy, clear. Enough for you." His tone was deliberately condescending, designed to belittle, to assert dominance. Around them, the low hum of the clinic continued, but a small pocket of silence had formed. A few patients in the waiting area glanced over, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to nervous apprehension. A nurse bustled past, averting her gaze. No one spoke up, no one intervened. Elias felt a familiar chill, the cold dread of being isolated, misunderstood, and powerless. He had faced down enemy fire with more composure than he could muster against this uniformed bully. "But he is a service dog," Elias repeated, his voice barely above a whisper, yet laced with quiet insistence. "He wears a vest, see?" He gestured to the clearly marked harness Atlas wore, emblazoned with the words, "Service animal, do not pet." "He's trained. He needs to be with me." Officer Miller took a deliberate step closer, invading Elias's personal space. His hand rested more firmly on his taser now. "I don't care what that vest says. I'm the authority here, and I say the dog goes. You can leave him tied up outside, or you can take him home. Your choice. But he's not coming further into this facility." The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Elias looked down at Atlas, whose tail gave a tentative, hopeful thump against the polished linoleum floor. His gaze fixed on his master's face, seeking reassurance. To leave Atlas outside was unthinkable. The dog was not merely a comfort, he was a medical necessity, as vital as any prescription Elias carried. The thought of Atlas alone and confused, tethered to a railing in the bustling, indifferent world outside the clinic doors, sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Elias. I can't do that," Elias said, his voice trembling but firm. "He stays with me. It's the law, the ADA." Miller let out a short, derisive laugh. "The ADA? You going to quote law to me now, Grandpa? I am the law here. Now are you going to comply, or do I have to make you?" He unclipped the taser from its holster, the black plastic gleaming ominously under the fluorescent lights. Atlas, sensing the escalation, the raw aggression in Miller's posture and tone, let out a low, almost inaudible growl, a soft rumble deep in his chest. It wasn't a threat, but a protective warning, an animal's instinctive response to danger directed at his beloved human. Miller, however, seized upon it. "Aha! See? Aggressive animal that clenches it. You've got 3 seconds to get him out of here before I neutralize the threat." His eyes glittered with disturbing anticipation. Elias felt his heart hammer against his ribs. His breath caught in his throat. This couldn't be happening, not here, not over Atlas. The sterile air crackled with unbearable tension. Time seemed to slow, each tick of the large institutional clock on the wall echoing like a hammer blow in Elias's ears. He opened his mouth to plead again, to explain, to beg if necessary, but no words came. He was frozen, caught in a nightmare. A Javan rhino couldn't escape from Officer Miller. His face, a mask of smug authority, saw only defiance in Elias's stricken silence. He saw the old man's refusal as a direct challenge, an affront to his perceived power. "Time's up, old man," he declared, his voice devoid of any human warmth, and then the unthinkable. With swift, brutal efficiency, Miller lunged forward and pressed the taser against Atlas's flank. There was a sickening crackle, a high-pitched, agonized yelp that tore through the lobby, a sound that would haunt Elias's nightmares for years to come. Atlas convulsed, his powerful body collapsing to the floor with a sickening thud, limbs twitching. A thin line of foam appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Atlas!" Elias screamed. The sound ripped from his very soul. He stumbled, his bad knee giving way, and fell heavily to his knees beside his beloved companion. He reached out, his hands, trembling violently, gathering the dog's limp head into his lap. Atlas's eyes were glazed, his breathing shallow and erratic. "No. No. Why?" Elias choked out, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks, blurring his vision of the fluorescent lights above. The quiet dignity he usually wore like a shield had shattered, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, and utterly devastated. This was more than an attack on an animal. It was an assault on his sanity, his lifeline, his very being. A wave of shocked murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Someone gasped audibly. A woman in a nearby chair began to cry softly. Officer Miller perhaps momentarily taken aback by the raw, visceral grief he had unleashed, or maybe just eager to solidify his control, began to shout. Animal was aggressive. "I had to neutralize the threat. Standard procedure." His voice was loud, defensive, attempting to drown out the palpable horror that now filled the space. But his bluster couldn't mask the tremor in his own hands. Elias, oblivious to everything but the still warm form in his arms, cradled Atlas, whispering frantic, broken words of comfort. "It's okay, boy, it's okay. I'm here. I'm so sorry." A young clinic volunteer, a girl named Sarah with kind eyes who'd often given Atlas a friendly pat on previous visits, looked on, her face pale with shock and outrage. She'd seen the whole thing, seen Miller's unwarranted aggression, Elias's desperate attempts to comply. Tears welled in her eyes. This was wrong, so terribly wrong. Her hand fumbled for her phone. She remembered Mr. Thorne once mentioning in a quiet moment that if anything ever happened, if he was ever in serious trouble, there was a specific number he carried, he'd shown it to her, written on a small creased card tucked into his wallet. In dire emergency only, she'd thought it peculiar at the time. Now her fingers flew across her screen. She found the clinic director's number first, dialing it with trembling urgency. But also, almost on instinct, she recalled that other, more cryptic instruction. After her brief, panicked call to the clinic administration, her mind raced back. To Mr. Thorne's emergency contact, what did dire emergency mean, if not this? While the director was being paged, Sarah, acting on a desperate hunch, whispered to a distraught Elias, "Mr. Thorne, that special number, do you have it?" Elias, barely coherent, nodded towards his inner jacket pocket. Sarah carefully retrieved his wallet, found the card, and dialed. The line connected almost instantly. 6 minutes, 6, agonizingly. Long minutes passed as Elias wept over Atlas, as Miller continued his loud, self-serving justifications, and as a stunned silence held the rest of the clinic hostage. Then, a low rumble began to seep through the building's walls, a sound steadily growing louder, deeper, more resonant than ordinary city traffic. It was unmistakably the ground-shaking thrum of heavy vehicles, accompanied by the distinct authoritative wail of non-civilian sirens. Heads started to turn, confusion spreading like a ripple through the lobby. The noise intensified, culminating in the sharp screech of tires on asphalt. Through the wide glass frontage of the clinic, a convoy appeared, dark green military Humvees. Alongside a sleek black command SUV with tinted windows and official government plates, roaring into view. Their lights flashed aggressively, completely blocking the entire ambulance bay and main entrance. The doors slammed open with military precision. From the lead black SUV, a figure stepped out with undeniable authority that immediately commanded attention. He was tall, ramrod straight, his uniform crisp and decorated with the unmistakable insignia of a high-ranking officer, a brigadier general. His chest displayed a constellation of service ribbons and commendations. His face was stern, etched with the gravity of command, his eyes sharp and scanning, missing nothing. He moved with a controlled urgency, flanked by 2 equally imposing aides. The moment the general strode through the automatic doors of the VA clinic, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. The low hum of conversation ceased instantly. Clinic staff, who had started gathering, froze mid-step. Patients stared, mouths agape. Officer Miller, who had been puffing out his chest, suddenly deflated, his face paling as he took in the rank on the approaching officer's shoulder. The general's piercing gaze swept over the chaotic scene, his expression hardening when it landed on the crumpled figure of Elias Thorne, kneeling on the floor, cradling his service dog. A flicker of something unreadable, shock, concern, and then unmistakable recognition, crossed the general's features. "Elias!" he barked, his voice a whip crack that shattered the stunned silence. "Sergeant Thorne, what in God's name happened here?" He covered the distance in 3 long strides, his polished boots echoing on the linoleum. Kneeling beside Elias, his stern demeanor softened with deep, palpable concern. He placed a hand gently on Elias's trembling shoulder. "Elias, it's me, Marcus Allen. What have they done to your dog?" Elias looked up, his tear-filled eyes struggling to focus. "General Allen," he whispered, disbelief warring with a dawning flicker of hope. The name and face slowly penetrated his grief-stricken haze. The general nodded, jaw tight, then rose to his full height. His gaze swept over the dumbstruck onlookers, finally settling with icy fury on Officer Miller, who now looked as if he wanted the floor to swallow him whole. "This man," General Allen began, his voice resonating with power and barely suppressed rage, "is Sergeant Elias Thorne. Does that name mean anything to any of you?" He paused, letting the question hang in the air. "Perhaps not. Let me enlighten you." He took a deep breath, his eyes never leaving Miller. "Sergeant Elias Thorne is not just any veteran. He is a recipient of the Distinguished Service Cross. He served 3 tours in places most of you only see in nightmares. He was Special Forces Pathfinder Unit. This man single-handedly held off an enemy battalion for 6 hours, wounded, protecting his fallen comrades until reinforcements arrived. He saved my life and the lives of 12 other men in my platoon during the Tet Offensive. He dragged me, unconscious and bleeding, half a mile through enemy fire." The general's voice thickened with emotion. "He is a hero. A goddamned American hero. And this dog," he gestured to the stricken Atlas, "this service animal, is all that helps him carry the weight of that heroism, the scars you cannot see. This dog is his lifeline." The general's words fell like hammer blows into the profound silence of the clinic lobby. The air, already thick with tension, now hummed with shock, shame, and dawning comprehension. Officer Miller's face, moments before a mask of arrogant authority, drained of all color, leaving a pasty, sickly hue. He stammered, "Sir, I didn't know. The dog, it seemed aggressive." General Allen's eyes, cold as chips of granite, pinned Miller to the spot. "Aggressive?" he thundered, his voice now laced with undisguised contempt. "This animal is trained to be calmer than most humans. You tased a decorated war hero's service dog in a Veterans Affairs clinic, a place that exists solely because of men like Sergeant Thorne." The general's gaze swept over the clinic director, a flustered, balding man in a rumpled suit who had scurried onto the scene, wringing his hands. "Director Thompson, I presume?" The director nodded, swallowing hard. "General Allen, this is a terrible misunderstanding, a regrettable incident. We will launch a full and immediate investigation." "Misunderstanding?" General Allen cut him off sharply. "Regrettable incident? What I see here, Director, is a catastrophic failure of respect, compassion, and basic human decency. This is an outrage." He turned back to Officer Miller, whose bravado had completely evaporated, replaced by a visible tremor. "Your name and badge number, officer." Miller fumbled but managed to recite his details. "You are relieved of your duties, effective immediately," the general stated, his voice flat and final. He glanced at one of his aides. "Major, ensure this man is escorted from the premises and understands the full gravity of his actions and the potential consequences, which I assure you will be severe." The major nodded curtly and stepped toward Miller, whose face was now a mask of disbelief and burgeoning fear. The clinic director began babbling apologies, promising disciplinary action, new training protocols, anything to appease the incandescent general. "We need a veterinarian now," General Allen commanded, returning his attention to Atlas. "My medics are outside, but this dog needs specialized care." As if on cue, 2 uniformed military medics entered, carrying a portable animal stretcher and a medical kit. They moved with practiced efficiency, their expressions grave as they began to assess Atlas, their movements gentle and respectful. Elias, still kneeling, watched them, his face a canvas of grief and fragile, emerging relief. He felt the general's strong hand on his shoulder again. "We'll take care of him, Elias. We'll take care of you both." Around them, the other veterans in the clinic, many of whom had witnessed the entire ordeal, now looked at Elias, Thorne with newfound awe. Some older men like himself slowly, almost reverently, rose to their feet. One man with a prosthetic leg struggled upright and rendered a shaky but determined salute. Then another and another, a quiet ripple of respect. Finally, the aftermath of that horrific morning unfolded with the swift, decisive action characteristic of General Marcus Allen. Atlas was carefully stabilized by the military medics, then rushed under the general's direct orders to the best veterinary trauma center in the state. His transport accompanied by a military escort, a silent testament to the gravity of the situation. Elias, though deeply shaken and refusing to leave Atlas's side until assured the dog was in the most capable hands, found himself surrounded by an unexpected wave of support orchestrated by the general. Officer Miller was, as promised, immediately suspended pending a full investigation that everyone knew, with General Allen's eyes on it, would be swift and unforgiving. The VA administration, from the local clinic director up to regional headquarters, went into full damage control, issuing profuse apologies and promising sweeping reforms. Director Thompson, visibly shaken, personally assured General Allen that mandatory comprehensive training on service animal protocols and veteran sensitivity, with particular emphasis on invisible wounds like PTSD, would be implemented across the entire clinic system, effective immediately. He even suggested a new plaque honoring service animals and their veteran handlers to be placed prominently in the lobby. Elias, overwhelmed but profoundly grateful, found his voice again, not to demand retribution, but to ensure no other veteran, no other service animal would ever endure such an ordeal. General Allen stayed with Elias for hours, first at the veterinary hospital, then accompanying him back to his small bungalow. They spoke little of the day's events, instead falling into the easy, quiet camaraderie of old soldiers reminiscing about shared hardships and improbable survivals from a lifetime ago. The general, a man who commanded thousands, listened patiently as Elias spoke of Atlas, of the quiet comfort and unwavering companionship the golden retriever provided, filling a void that medals and commendations never could. Atlas miraculously began to recover. The taser had delivered a painful, shocking blow, but thanks to immediate and expert care, there appeared to be no permanent physical damage, though emotional trauma for both dog and master would linger in the days and weeks to follow. The ripples of that confrontation spread. Officer Miller was terminated from his position, his career in security irrevocably tarnished. There were even whispers of potential civil charges, though Elias, true to his quiet nature, expressed no desire for further punitive action, stating only that he hoped the man learned a profound lesson in humility and respect. The VA clinic, true to Director Thompson's panicked promises, underwent a visible transformation. New signage clearly outlining the rights of individuals with service animals appeared. Staff members attended rigorous training sessions, their attitude shifting from bureaucratic indifference to a more engaged, empathetic approach. General Allen made several unannounced follow-up visits, his mere presence a potent reminder of the standards now expected. Elias Thorne, the quiet, unassuming veteran, found his life subtly changed. He hadn't sought recognition, but it found him nonetheless. When he and Atlas, now fully recovered though perhaps a little more watchful, next visited the clinic for a rescheduled appointment, they were greeted not with suspicion, but with genuine warmth. Staff members smiled. Patients nodded respectfully. A young nurse rushed forward to offer Atlas a fresh bowl of water. The clinic director himself came out to personally welcome them, his apology now sounding sincere, his demeanor deferential. Elias didn't dwell on the past horror, but carried himself with a subtly restored dignity, the validation of his worth, of his service, having mended something deep within him. He was no longer just an old man with a dog. He was Sergeant Elias Thorne, a hero, and Atlas was his indispensable partner. The fear that once accompanied his clinic visits began to recede, replaced by cautious optimism. Perhaps, just perhaps, things could change for the better. The vindication of Elias Thorne and the due respect finally accorded to his loyal service dog, Atlas, echoed far beyond the walls of that single VA clinic. Officer Miller faced the full consequences of his callous actions, a stark reminder that authority without compassion is mere tyranny. The clinic itself became a model for others. Its reformed policies and newfound emphasis on empathetic care for veterans and their service animals lauded as a step in the right direction. Most importantly, Elias Thorne, a man who had silently carried the burdens of his heroism for decades, was finally seen, his dignity restored, his quiet sacrifices acknowledged, not with fanfare, but with the simple, profound human currency of respect. Atlas, his faithful companion, recovered fully, his playful spirit returning, though he remained ever watchful, ever devoted to the man who was his entire world. The true lesson of that harrowing day resonated deeply, that the measure of a person is not found in their outward appearance, age, or current station, but in the content of their character, the depth of their sacrifices, and the quiet courage with which they face their days. It served as a poignant reminder that heroes often walk among us unseen. Their battles fought long ago, but their scars, both visible and invisible, carried with enduring strength. The bond between a veteran and their service animal, a sacred trust forged in shared vulnerability and unwavering loyalty, was shown to deserve the utmost honor. Imagine Elias and Atlas, months later, walking in their favorite park. The sun dapples through the leaves, painting shifting patterns on the path. Atlas, his golden coat gleaming, trots happily by Elias's side, occasionally nudging his master's hand for a reassuring pat. Elias walks a little taller now. The stoop in his shoulders lessened. He exchanges a smile with a young mother pushing a stroller, a nod with a fellow dog walker. He is at peace, the shadows of the past held at bay by the steadfast love of his dog, and the quiet knowledge that his worth, once so cruelly dismissed, is now recognized. The world around him hasn't drastically changed, but his place within, it feels more secure, more respected, more like home. Subscribe to Hidden Sparks for more stories that unveil the hidden honor among us and remind us to always look deeper. Comment respect if you believe every veteran and their loyal companions deserve our deepest gratitude and understanding.